Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started.
Okay, we're back. And a few episodes ago, when I was in my little Taylor Swifty zone, and I had some lyrics there, and I said, I need to look at other genres. And so I have one for you. It's kind of applicable. You ready?
I'm ready. I'm so ready.
Will the real Slim Shady please stand up? There is some shady stuff out there, and we are constantly being confronted with these Slim Shadies that we don't know are lurking in the background. We're just trying to do our dentistry and fight insurance and get paid and try to find staff, and then these other lurky-loos come out of the woodworks, and there's some shadiness out there.
That is appropriate. Man, good genre to bring in here.
I hope it is, because I know both of us have been wanting to talk about these random little things that we're like, how do we make an episode out of this? Mm-hmm. But it's still things that, like, I feel like I've been assaulted with, or you've been assaulted with. You're like, what the beep? Like, can I just go back to, like, I never thought I would want to go back to fighting insurance, right? Like, I'd rather do that than have to deal with this. And so just some maybe heads up and some tips on not if, but when this happens to you. Because as a practice owner, shady shit's going to happen to you. The Slim Shadies are out there, and just awareness, I guess, would be the theme of this.
Yes, I think, yes, totally random things that not can, but probably will happen to you at some point.
And some variation.
Yes, so this is our effort to keep people aware of these little random things that we've been collecting up for this Slim Shady episodes.
Yes. I don't even know if that, thinking about that song, it may not apply at all, but it
sounds like it applies.
Okay. Shady, shady, shady. Yes. It kind of goes hand in hand with drama. So
it does on this one. It does for sure.
Okay.
So are you okay starting with the scam? Where do you think we should start with this? We've got several that we want to talk through.
Okay, so, yes.
Because the scam is going to have to explain.
Yeah, but now we kind of just, like...
Should I back up and...
Okay, that's okay, but that'll help me keep me streamlined and on topic and focused. But this occurred, and it does tie to the other patient, it does tie to the other situation, too. So there's, like, three kind of things looming here.
I feel like we have to start here, so...
Okay. So, this was last November, and I had been, this is like dates back to a couple of years ago, like 2-ish years ago, where there's a family in my practice where the mom and dad are getting divorced, and it's a contentious custody battle. And so I think back then, 2-ish years ago, we got like a court order to submit dental records and whatever. And I don't think that's the first time that's happened. It doesn't happen that often, surprisingly, in a pedo practice. You'd think that happened more often, but at least for us, we've been lucky that hasn't happened that many times over the years, like 10 or less, I would say. Anywho, I know that because now, fast forward to, like, I don't know, August-ish of 23, it starts rearing its ugly head again, where, like, we're starting to get these subpoenas and these court orders and the mom's calling and whatever. And we sent you this 2 years ago. So I guess we luckily already had all of that. And now we just had to send the last, like, year's worth of stuff. And so we send it. And then, like, as it's getting closer to, like, October, November, I want to say sometime in October, we got a subpoena for, I guess, for me to be an expert witness and something. And I'm like, well, who, like, this wasn't a case of neglect, of trauma. Like, there was nothing in this kid's, she'd just been coming for recare. Yeah. Like, there was nothing. And so I was like, why am I being an expert for this? Like, in my mind, I'm like, is the mom just grasping for straws here? Because, and her point was, like, the dad never brings her, and I have to bring her every 3 months because when she's over there, he doesn't make her breath, like whatever it was. I'm like, okay, it still seems kind of flimsy, but I can guarantee you nobody at that court wants to hear from the pediatric dentist. Like, nobody cares about me and what we have to say, especially when it's just about recare. So I kind of was like, okay, this is weird, but whatever. Like, I've got a subpoena now. I got to do something with this. Well, we were told that if we either I would have to show up to court to be this expert witness, or I could get it notarized and say that these are the records. Like, so we printed off all the records. We made a copy on a USB. I called my buddy who does notary stuff, which I know I could have gone to the bank to. Well, I guess that's another question. Where do you go for a notary?
There are notary services everywhere, honestly. A lot of the print shops have a notary there.
Do you have to pay for that?
Yes.
Right. So again, I mean, I know this is silly, but I'm like, well, now I've got to go out of my way for this service for foolery.
Yeah.
Did I get paid enough? I'm sure your insurance claim for the cleaning didn't pay enough for me to go. Anyway, I've got a buddy, though, that, you know, does my notary stuff for me. Hadn't had lunch with him in a while. Hey, man, can you meet me for lunch? I've got to get this notarized. So we did and sent that in. Actually, I didn't send it in. It was this. They had to come physically pick it up. So it's like my staff's wasting time coordinating with this attorney's office. I'm just like, this is so irritating. Anyway, this little old, like, I guess they're like, oh, the person's here to pick this up. And I'm like, I am not walking up to the front. They can walk on back here. Like, just being a total bee about it for no reason. But I was already annoyed with the process. Well, this little old lady comes to the back to get it. And then I felt bad. I'm like, if I'd known it was a little old lady, I would have walked it up there myself.
Oh,
anyway, so that, there you go. Like, it's handled, right? Well, a couple of weeks later, I get a call from the mom, calls our office, and she's like, hey, can you, it's actually gotten, now it's going to be a Zoom call. So can you be on this Zoom call? Well, I remember it was November because it was going to be Thanksgiving break. We are slammed in a pedo office in Thanksgiving break. And I'm like, no, I can't get on this Zoom call while you're in the middle of your whatever. Like, the best I could do for you is after 3 p.m. Like, we've got a full day. I can't. So she calls one day asking about that, whatever. Then the next day I get Tiff's treats from her saying, thank you for being here. I'm like, this is so weird. Like, whatever. Day 3, I get the attorney for that mom calling me saying, hey, can I prep you for this call? I'm like, the call that I didn't even promise I was going to be on. And that's when I was like, dude, like, if y'all are, if she's told you there's some earth-shattering thing this dad is doing, like, there's not.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I'm even a good witness for you.
Yeah.
Day 4, the mom or the attorney, I think the attorney calls and says that they're going to pay me for my time if I do get on this call. And I'm like, no amount of money in the world. Like, can y'all just go away? Don't pay me. Just go away. You know? And then Friday, this is the Friday we were going to go see Trolls. Trolls 3 came out, right?
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So we're chugging along midday, and I happen to be sitting between patient appointments, right? And I'm typing, and I look down at my phone. It's ringing, and it says it's the Irving Police Department. And I'm like, what is that? Didn't answer it. Went to voicemail, listened to the voicemail, and it's a guy that was like, hey, you know, we need to get hold of you, whatever, about this custody something. And I'm like, what? Call back. Very long story, very short. This guy was like, you didn't show up to court yesterday, so you're in contempt, and the judge has these citations out for your arrest because you didn't show up to court. And I'm like, no, man, there was no court. It got moved to next week. It's a Zoom call, like, whatever. And he's like, I don't know about any of that. I'm just the officer who's having to let you know about these citations. Either you can turn yourself in, or there's a car waiting to come pick you up. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And Bethany, he had I was like, no, I had turned in my notarized paperwork. And he's like, yeah, it's dated this day. And because this is a case involving a minor, HIPAA laws prevail here, and whatever else he said. So obviously we've already said the word scam, but in the moment, like, he knew too much information in my mind.
Enough to scare you.
Enough to scare me. And so, anyway, I won't even go through all the foolery of that day because half the audience is probably like, you're an idiot. But in the moment, when they're saying there's a car that's going to come pick you up in the middle of patient care, this police car comes and takes me away. Like, yeah, I guess I did get scammed. I'm an idiot. But in that moment, it was like, it all added up. Like, because this case had just been in
It's
my
fresh.
face.
Yes.
It's fresh. Every day I'm getting a call about this case. Every day I'm getting more and more irritated. And now I'm getting arrested because I didn't show up to court. It sounds foolish now, but in the moment, he knew too much.
Yeah.
He knew the original court date. He knew that it was a minor. He knew he had the date of the paperwork that I had sent in, the notarized paperwork.
Which is crazy. That's astounding to me.
So basically, then people are like, well, what would this scam artist want? Well, what he was trying to get me to do was either the squad car was going to come pick me up, or if I wanted to go ahead and pay the citations to buy time, I could do that. And so one citation was $5,000 and the other one was $4,000. But if I went and got a check made out for that, and so I think in that moment, like, you know, anyway, I won't get into all the details. Suffice it to say, it was a scam, but I got scammed and it felt like it was hours. It was probably 20 minutes. But to me, my question's going, how did they get all that information? How do they call from the Irving Police Department? Like, how do scam? And my husband later was like, I mean, that happens all the time. People, I'm like, okay, I guess I live in a bubble. I don't know about all of this.
Well, and I think this is the con artist world right here is they know...
The Slim Shady world. Let's stick to our...
Oh, yeah, Slim Shady. Yeah. This is the Slim Shady world right here because they are hacking all of this information. They do somehow know this information. Now, they may not know that you've had phone call after email after phone call after email, but they're stepping into the onslaught of stuff that you've been dealing with this case. It seems normal to you. It's another day in the life of this case that you've been dealing with, and they just happen to arrive right on time for you. And again, that is the Slim Shady world. They know how to get people to do what they want them to do. Even intelligent doctors that know, like, why would I have to pay this fine again? Like, this doesn't make any sense. It made you question yourself.
Well, and that's why I said to you, I said, my only takeaway is here, I better go do some real crimes so I can see how the system works. Because I would have known, you know, if I had ever been arrested, I would have known that this is like kind of BS what they're throwing me. But I'm so naive with that, I had no idea. And like, you know, my husband's saying that, yeah, they can, I still don't know how they fabricate that it shows up on my phone, that it's the Irving Police Department calling.
Yeah.
But when I called the number back, the voicemail was, this is the Department of blah, 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 blah. And he's like, well, did you call the number back or did you call the Irving Police Department? I'm like, well, I thought it was the same thing, but you're right. I guess I called that number back, which was the other misstep. So for those of us that are completely naive, Bethany, I'm just trying to do patient care. And again, I'd rather go back to fighting Delta Dental than have to deal with this nonsense because it scared the bejesus out of me.
I remember that the message that day, you thought you were getting arrested. Like, you literally were like, a police car is coming to get me. Yeah.
And I cry twice a year. And so, of course, as I'm on the phone with this guy who's talking to me about this, and of course, I'm kind of going, this stupid case again, go away. And as he's talking, and as I'm like, you know, I got more and more heated, and I shut the office door, but I find myself screaming at this guy for 2 minutes. Screaming. I don't know how the patients didn't hear me, but I'm like, hey, fucking bullshit. You think you're going to pay me on Monday? Now you have to triple the cost for me to show up on your Zoom call. Like every expletive that I don't even know that is in my vocabulary, suddenly there it was. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. I hang up on this, quote, police officer. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous looking back at it. And I start going, okay, you had one sitting duck. Hopefully I can't be the only one. Luckily I didn't pay, right? Yeah. It didn't get that far. So I don't know what caused the common sense to start kicking back in. But what any pearls for people other than going out and committing crimes for real? So I would know what isn't legit.
We are not encouraging more Slim Shadys out there. So please don't go do that. But I would say, first and foremost, this is where I think I'm going to have a repetitive theme here that starts to emerge, which is slow down, think, and talk to other people. Just slow it all down. Hit the pause button.
Well, in my defense, the reason I didn't talk to other people is, again, this is going to sound so stupid now, but in the middle of the call, what he hit me with was, this was a case involving a minor, so HIPAA applies, and I can't talk to somebody else.
Right.
And my husband right away was like, well, if he told you can't talk to a lawyer, you should have known better right there.
Right.
I'm like, I mean, I guess I should have, but the options he gave me were either there's a squad car out and it's a criminal case, or in which case, go ahead and talk to your attorney. Or if you don't want the squad car to come in, if you don't want the police officer to come inside and get you, and we're going to handle this as civil matter, then HIPAA applies. It sounds so stupid now, but in the moment,
doesn't sound
because
stupid.
I didn't know the difference, and he knew it was a case involving a minor. I guess your point of slow down.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
I'd never heard of any other fool like me getting caught up in a scam call regarding the dental office like this.
Who would have? And that's why we wanted it to be showcased on this episode. For all the Slim Shadys out there, like, you've been exposed now, because this is something, who would have thought that you would have ever been hit with something like this? You were.
I would have thought like a former employee coming to threaten me, a patient coming to threaten me, Delta Dental coming to threaten me. Like, that I would have expected. I just wasn't expecting. And in my, almost 20-ish years of being in the dental field, I've never had, I mean, especially in a pedo practice, you'd think I'd get it more often. I want to say less than 10 times. Yeah. Possibly even just 5, where we've been involved in a custody, and us having to say, we're not getting involved in this custody matter. And that was that. Yeah. So I guess just not having experience and exposure to...
Well, and that's, what if you would have known that this happened to somebody else? I would imagine it's so rare that in the moment you can't even filter out that this could be a scam, because you've never even heard of something like this happening. So I think just, first of all, being aware that this kind of stuff happens, and you keep saying it sounds so ridiculous in the moment. I think it sounds very factual. The way that they, manipulated this and got you to this certain point where you really were believing these only 2 options existed. Like, that's exactly where they wanted you, so that you would go write the $5,000 check to get out of this particular situation. So they're called Slim Shadys for a reason, and they were leading you towards a certain path that they needed you to.
And I was following. I fell right into that
and it was
web.
emotional. That's emotional to think that your 2 options are pay $5,000 to get out of this situation, or you're going to be arrested, which is scary to think about that. So to me, that slowdown is putting that phone, I need to put you on hold for just a moment. I'll be right back with you. Even if you feel like it is a police officer and this is actually really happening, which you did in that moment, just that pause. Oh my gosh, I'm going off the rails here. I'm getting super emotional. Let me just pause it. Let me just, if nothing else, I know HIPAA applies here, but everybody in my office is under the same HIPAA policy. We all share this patient. We've all talked through this legal, suit. If nothing else, I can at least pull, even if it's just a team member in here, to go, let me tell you about this situation. What is your thought in this moment? While the person's on hold, just that pause and letting your brain catch up with the facts. But what happened was, they got you so emotional. The emotion overclouded any logic.
Yeah, because he did. I mean, he was like, get a piece of paper. Here's the citation numbers. Here's the like, he was quoting, whatever. It sounded legal. Yeah. And so, anyway. Okay. So that was example number 1. Which then kind of leads to, so that was that. And luckily I didn't pay them, and I, hung up, and then I deleted or blocked their number, and that was that. Well, about 3 weeks later, I'm in the office, and I'm, it was just myself. Like, the associate had already left. We were trying to wrap up the day, but there were like 4 patients all waiting to talk and whatever. And so my front desk comes and says, hey, there's a guy here to talk to you. And I couldn't even process it, right? Because I'm so busy. Like, I'm literally in the middle of a conversation with a parent. And I was like, huh, what guy? Like, just put him to the side. Like, I can't deal with that right now. Just tell him to hang on. So I go and I see these couple of patients finish up, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's some dude waiting to talk to me. Like, what is this? Which, again, I mean, I feel like I've got a bunch of we've trained our front to be pretty good bulldogs. Yes. So I really was like, how did this one slip through the cracks? Well, as I round the corner coming up to the front, it's a police officer, and he's got his clipboard. He's an older gentleman. And so I kind of was just not very friendly. And I kind of went up and I was like, are you waiting on me? Like, what are you who are you looking for? And he said, are you, and so my maiden name, my office name is Rena Kuba. My last name in my private life is my married last name. It's kind of harder to pronounce. And he's like, are you Rena, whatever? And I think it was just PTSD from 3 weeks before and, getting bombarded right now. Like I think this goes back to your theme. If I had just paused and went back to my office and said, okay, somebody come update me on who this guy is. Yeah. But I didn't. I just went head deep into straight in, patient, you at checkout, you, oh yeah, you man, you're waiting here for me. What do you need? I should have paused. And so, he's got his like constable badge on his belt and whatever else he had. And he's like, are you Rena? And I was like, no. Because in my mind, I'm like, I don't know who you're talking about. You didn't say my last name right. Who knows who you're talking about? So he goes, oh, do you know Rena? She's like, I don't know. I mean, it was so useless and stupid, right? And so then he's got his like clipboard and he points to it and it's my name. He's like, well, do you know who this is? I'm like, yes. And he's like, okay, well, who is it? Well, it's me. I'm sure I sounded like, like the 16-year-old caught red-handed, stealing a necklace from Macy's. Like, it was so useless.
Did you go, let me guess, are you at the Irving Police Department?
My heart was racing so fast. And, like, every defense, like, my claws were about to come out. Like, I'm just like, fight or flight. And I wasn't sure which way I was going just yet. And so I guess I was picking fight in the moment. So he's like, oh, well, I'm here. And I was like, what? Wait. Who are you? And so he's like, oh, and he points to like his badge on his belt. And he's like, oh, well, I'm whatever he was starting to say. And I was like, I don't know what that is. I guess in my mind, I was like, is that a toy? Like, I've already been scammed once. I'm not getting scammed again. Like, anybody can get that off of Temu, sir. Like,
let me pull out my badge while we're at it.
Exactly. I was like, I don't know what that is. I need to see some identification. Like, who are you? And what do you want? Yeah. And so, I mean, I could not have been more rude or more ghetto for that matter. And so he pulls out his ID and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, what can I help you with? What do you need? And so he pulls out a subpoena and I'm like, the hell is my life becoming with these subpoenas already? And so I said, that's it. That's all you're doing is handing me the subpoena. And he's like, yeah. I was like, so I can go. And he's like, yeah. I was like, okay. Well, again, I apologize for being so rude. And then I walked off. And it was a subpoena for, remember the case we've talked about? The kid who fell in my game room and we submitted it over a year ago.
Yes.
And I thought it was gone and went away.
And then all of a sudden, here's this constable. It hasn't gone away. I'm being sued now, which I won't get into all of that because we already have the episode about it. But so this was legit. But it's 3 weeks after the
3 weeks after the other one,
Shady.
And I'm just like, I hate all of you. Like Delta Dental, can y'all come in here, honey?
I love you,
I'll fight
Delta.
you any day. I'll fight you any day. Like anything.
So I think it's important to know because a lot of people have not been sued yet. So I do think it's helpful to know that this is the process, right? You're essentially served papers. You could very well, if anybody ever sues you, really for a litany of reasons, this is how it starts. You are essentially served papers.
Well, again, we see it on TV, right? It's like the food delivery guy who's really not delivering food. Here's your papers.
Yeah.
Like, I think I just saw that on an episode of Suits or something. So, but I mean, there's legit cops, constables, whoever, who can come serve you with papers as well.
Yes. And that's all it is. They hand over papers to you. They ensure that it's you, and then they hand over the papers.
Although he didn't ask for my ID, so I don't know. Anyway,
maybe he is a little Slim Shady himself.
So what would I do with the subpoena now? Like, what should I do with this?
Well, that's where. So let's assume that a client has never been, or a dentist has never been served before, and now they're served. In this particular case, I'm sure you opened the information and read it and knew exactly what it related to. It's going to be related to whatever. So this was patient patient issue and a liability issue, which means you immediately did what?
Went to my liability guy, and I went back to that email where we thought a year ago that it had gone away, and I was like, oh, it's back. So
in this particular case, it was a liability issue, which had already started the process a year ago when it happened. You immediately reached out to your authority or to your expert on that. If it were something HR related, which again is very rare, doesn't mean that it can't happen, but if an employee was suing you for some other former reason, then you would contact a lawyer in that particular case. Most clients of mine don't have any type of insurance for employee related issues. So
that would not fall under general liability, I guess, then?
Usually not, unless it was like which even then it wouldn't fall under general liability. No. Most of the time, that's not going to fall under general liability.
So how do you find said lawyer? Like, what am I looking for when I go online?
You could certainly start with your general liability and make sure that it's not covered under there, depending upon your policy. I would imagine most of them are not going to be, but they could potentially direct you to where you need to go. So I don't think it hurts to get your general liability on the phone. But most of the time, you're going to need a good general lawyer that you have on file, whether that's the person that originally helped you file all of your paperwork. They helped set you up as an entity or as an organization. They got your all your business papers in order.
So I guess for me, that would be my accountant who had done that for me back in the day. So he wouldn't be helpful.
But he could potentially direct you to who they coordinate with. So most of the time, at least in the legal world or in the accounting world, they have their Rolodex of people that you're like, okay, let me read this paperwork that I just got dropped off to me. Who do I need to go to? And normally they've got a connection in place. I would not recommend Google employment lawyer and go that route. I would go through your sources that you have in place to get to the person that you need to work with.
Okay, good to know. Okay, so that's that one. And then something you just said made me think of, so back to the, because you've got a good one that ties in with this. Mm-hmm. Speaking of, do you want to talk about yours and then I'll come back and, okay.
Well, this would be one similar, I think connected, if you've got like a workman's comp claim that has been filed, you should have if you've got workman's comp insurance, that is your authority on this. So if an employee has a workplace injury that now they're filing a claim for, then once you receive that information, you're going directly to your workman's comp policy.
So in my case, I know who that would be my general liability guy too, because he handles that for me. But if you don't have workers' comp, then what do you do?
So you most have to have general liability anyway. So even if you don't have workman's comp, you have general liability. Every practice that's open has some type of liability insurance.
So that would be the person you would...
I would go to that person then. If you don't have a direct workman's comp, then you're at least going to your general liability and going, hey, what do I do with this particular situation? Now, if you don't have workman's comp insurance in place and a workplace injury happens, most of my clients have workman's comp. It's insurance. It's meant to be there.
I feel like the general liability people tell you to get it, and it's not that much more expensive.
It's not that much more expensive. I think it's worth it for peace of mind. But if any client of mine doesn't have that in place and there's an injury, then most of the time, let's say it's something as simple as a needle poke. Well, that's not simple, but it's more likely to happen than some kind of major falling through the glass or something like that. So let's say there's a needle poke and there's no workman's comp insurance in place, then oftentimes my client would send the employee to the doctor and they would pay for that doctor's bill. They would pay for the lab work. They would pay for the follow-up lab work in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it is after a needle poke. So essentially that practice owner takes on the financial burden of paying for that. That's where it gets risky, because what if they picked up some bloodborne pathogen from that? Then in theory, you're taking on the ownership of all the treatments or anything that they need to have done for their
versus
lifetime.
Workers' comp would have picked it up if you had workers' comp.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think workers' comp is worth it.
Okay. So I think what about someone who's claiming that they got hurt in the workplace?
Yes. So in this particular case, this is where documentation is key. So which this has happened before, with a client of mine where there's a false claim, essentially, that, there wasn't an actual workplace injury sustained, but there was still a claim that was filed. So I think anytime as an employer, one of your responsibilities is to ensure that you have a safe environment for your employees. That is, yes, you want to keep your patients safe, but you also want to keep your employees safe, which means that if there are certain accommodations that need to be made, that you are, unless they're completely unrealistic, but that you're quick to make those accommodations. You want to have proof on record, so to speak, that if an employee needed some type of accommodation, that you really did try in the best of your ability to make that accommodation. Now, there's always a limit to this. We don't need to get crazy with it. But one simple thing in your practice that you did was the ladies at the reception area were just kind of complaining that they're in their seats all the time and that they would love to have the ability to stand. Now, is there an injury that's going to happen from sitting all the time? No. But what if somebody in your office has back pain and they're really struggling, with sitting all day? Installing those, the Veridesks,
where you can different brands, but Veridesk is the one I think of, like where you can lift up
the whole unit so that the ladies at your front can stand. So one of them in particular stands most of the day because she prefers that it's easier on her body. That's a simple change. Now, there was cost involved with that, without a doubt, to purchase the equipment to raise the computer up and down. But that was a simple change that you made. Oftentimes with receptionists, one of the things that I hear the most complaint about is the phone when they're having to type into the computer and hold the phone up to their ear, their shoulder is constantly up, having to hold the phone to the ear as they type. It is probably the most common complaint that I hear. And so there are certainly fixtures that make it where the neck can stay direct. So they add an attachment to the actual phone, or they install headless, what is it called? Yeah. Handless. Thank you. Headless phones. That sounds like fun. Hands-free phones where it's just an earpiece that can go in where the person can type and they just have that earpiece in. Accommodations like that are fantastic.
Which we love the earpieces, which we got years ago for that very reason, but also because then it makes the person portable. Like they just have the headset on so they can be in the break room and still pick up the phone. They could be, if we're down a man and they're in sterile helping us, but they can still answer the phones because they've got a
earpiece in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's an easy accommodation. I've got one client that he had a team member that was primarily responsible for washing all the lab jackets and hanging those up. And it was hard for her to reach where to hang the lab jackets. And so he was like, oh, absolutely, we can move that down. So you want to show as a practice owner that you're doing everything that you can to make a safe environment. If one of the responsibilities that you have is team members change the lights up in the ceiling, and those ceilings are, 10 feet, or the vents, the air vents, that's very common that team members are the ones that are changing the air filters, then you need to show that you've provided a ladder that is safe for that. That we're not like this, having to set a ladder on a chair and then that chair is leaning against the wall and no, I've got the appropriate ladder to get my employee safely up there. And my requirement is that there's always somebody there to support the ladder to make sure that it's 100% safe. You just want to think about workplace safety.
So I think that's what, we have our company, an AC company that comes in and changes the vents and does the maintenance work quarterly or whatever. So that for me is so that nobody has to get up there.
Peace of mind.
Yes. Same, bulbs and stuff. That I don't think we change a lot of bulbs. Maybe we're buying the
LED LEDs, long lasting. Yeah, which again, make that change. If you've got the lights that are constantly going out, invest in the LED bulbs so that there's less.
But that's one thing that helps informs a lot of times my decision making for snow days, because in Dallas we get ice, we don't get snow, and the way both entrances to my building doesn't get a lot of sunlight. Like the awning kind of creates shade. So there'll be a strip of ice right trying to get into the building. I will cancel days. Like it is not worth it for the production that day. I would rather have patients angry at me and staff angry at me than have one patient or team member slip and slide and hurt themselves. And now I'm liable for that. Like that is far more costly than.
That is such a good takeaway on this, to think about the injuries that could happen, and it's not worth it. Like one day of production is not worth the headache, but also the cost that could be associated with some of these injuries. So I have had a client experience a workman's comp claim that was not related to a workplace injury. So talk about weird things that can happen. That can happen. And
so I would bet what's happening with that is what's happening with me with the kid that fell, because technically, I mean, I think I have a very solid case to say this was a preventable accident only if the mom had been watching the child. But apparently in the state of Texas, I'm still liable for that. And part of me starts going, this is complete BS. But I think it's easier for the liability company to settle. And these people know that. I would bet you money that workers' comp, even though it's not a workplace thing, that employee can sue. And it's going to be cheaper for workers' comp to settle with her than it would be for us as a dentist to go separate, hire my own attorney to fight this.
Yep.
I mean, that's what happens with a lot of these malpractice claims too, right? Like you just settle because it's not worth it. Makes my blood boil.
There's no system can be scammed that way. It. There is no fairness in it.
Talk about slim shadies. So,
and you're right. It's for the liability company or for the workman's comp company to go to court to fight an issue is 10 times more expensive. And their job is get out of this as cheap as we possibly can, which means we're going to settle this particular case. And there's no fairness in that whatsoever. It's wrong. It doesn't feel good, but it's the reason why you have that company in place. So could you, with this, injury that happened at your office, could you be like, no, on principle alone, I'm going to go out, I'm going to hire my lawyer, and we're going to win this case? You could, but it's going to cost you a fortune.
Which it's not going to cost that lady anything.
No, because chances are that lawyer for that lady is getting paid off of the settlement. So she's not saying, hey, let's go to court and I'll pay you this, this money. That lawyer,
she's paying nothing.
She's paying nothing.
Yeah.
Which is
shady.
So, but that can happen, and it's frustrating in the process. I know it was frustrating for you, for my client that has the claim that wasn't a workplace injury. That's frustrating for my client as well. But the job of the company, workman's comp, liability, whatever, is to get you out of it as cheap as possible.
So, question that I don't know the answer to, and I don't know that you know, but just again thinking down the same path. If this patient of mine wanted to come back and be a patient, do I have to see her or not? Or for this client of yours, that this lady is saying that she had a pre-existing condition, but she's claiming it's a workman's comp thing. I mean, I'm assuming he's got the documentation to show that it didn't happen on the premises. But can he fire her? What do you do? Like, where's our legal obligation at this point?
Yeah. So this is where I'd go back to my theme of pause and seek advice. I know I'm not the one legally to advise. I'm not a lawyer. So this is why we have our legal people in place. But part of what I think about is future risk to my clients. So for your patient to come back and to be a patient in your practice, that is high risk, in my opinion. Because if they have essentially gotten away with this once and have benefited off of it, they can do it again. So we have spotted a risky person.
We've spotted a slim shady.
We've spotted a slim shady. For my client with the employee, she, to me, poses a risk to the practice, because if she's filed a claim once, what prevents her from filing another claim again? So I would say, go to your legal people and say, what is my path of getting this patient out of my practice? What is my path of getting this employee out of my practice. And it's different state by state from an employment standpoint. Texas is one of the most freeing places to be an employer because we have a lot of freedom to get rid of a employee for any reason.
But I mean, they say that on paper, but then we're still going to get hit with the tax increase.
Yeah,
like
you're going to
say
get
that
punished
I
for
can,
it.
but yeah.
Yeah. So I would say, to me, in your case with the patient, I wouldn't want her back in the practice.
Right,
as
but I
patient.
don't know how I would or could.
Which technically,
So I'd have to look into state board rules to make sure I'm not abandoning the patient. I mean, I feel that way about anybody who's left a negative review. I'm like, I don't want you back in my practice, obviously. Why would you want to come back to my practice after leaving a bad review?
Yep.
But we still have some like that, and I'm just floored and going, clearly there's no making you happy.
Yeah.
Or you're upset about, stupid Delta Dental, and like either way, you've made a complaint, and I don't want you in this practice anymore. But if I dismiss you, am I creating a whole nother avalanche of things that you're going to complain about that you see is a problem that anyway.
Well, and that's where you seek advice. Your state board's going to be critical with patient care on what are the appropriate steps to take. I know most times when you're choosing to no longer see a patient, you have to technically dismiss them in most states. Dismiss them from the practice. You have to have a 30-day window where they're able to come back for emergency care.
In Texas, there's a very clear outline of how you need to do it, and I've heard of people that get in trouble all the time because they didn't follow that. Yeah, mm-hmm. Texas is huge on patient abandonment.
And it's the same thing with employees. You got to know your state laws, your state employment laws, to make the right choice. If you've got a Slim Shady on your team that you need to get rid of, make sure that you're understanding your state employment laws so that you aren't breaking any rules in that. But I would say either way, if you've got a Slim Shady that you've spotted, you no longer want to do business with them, either as an employer or as a doctor. Figure out how to...
So pause and seek advice.
Yep. I think that's the key takeaway.
So the one I'm going to end with here, that I think probably comes up fairly often, is so it's going to go back to where I started, that same family with the court case and whatever. And I think what we heard was that the mom ultimately lost full custody. I was like, okay, that makes more sense. Like, why is she hounding me to be her star witness when I've got nothing to say? Like, it doesn't make sense. So she's grasping at straws here. And so that's all we know, is that she lost full custody. And so that was back in November, December. Well, this was probably a month ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that, where she's calling, and I saw the kid on the schedule, but it was a day that I wasn't going to be there, but I saw that name. I'm like, there's that kid again, again, talk about PTSD. I'm like, ugh. But didn't think anything more of it and moved on. Well, I guess the mom called and said, did he bring her to the appointment, and, what's going on with her dental care? So luckily my front desk knows, they've been very well HIPAA trained, and they know that they need to pause and look into that. And
which is a key takeaway. Like, I know we're kind of glossing over that, but your team needs to know in these custody situations what to do. So your team is trained in that. Most are not.
Well, and again, because of the way this played out with the whole scam and the whatever, and it happened to be on the day that we were having a team building event where we were all going to go watch Trolls 3 together on opening night. So we were all keenly aware of this family situation and all of this. So that name, I think everybody kind of like hair on the back of their neck when we knew she was coming in, and then she didn't come in, and now here's this mom again. So mom's asking for this information. Luckily, my front desk comes and says, hey, like, we can't give her this information, right? And I was like, no, we can't. And so I think we said that. We've texted her back and said something like, well, per the court order, we're not allowed to give you that information. To which she then sends this, like, awful email, like, y'all have no right. Look at this, the Dental Practice Act says this, you can't keep a parent away from getting the records, and, look at the Family Practice Act, you need to blah, 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 whatever it was. I mean, she's throwing around all sorts of things that honestly would scare me if I wasn't used to looking at records and looking at
The law.
stuff. So it would have scared me had I not had that background. But I was just like, lady, I know what that Dental Practice Act says, and this doesn't apply to that. But again, she's starting to show her threatening stuff. So I then sent an email, through the front desk that said, and I was like, let's copy the mom, the previous attorney, because we have her name, and copy the dad, and just say, hey, we know you're asking for information per the decree we have. We're not allowed to give that. Is there another decree, or have there been updates in this case?
Yeah.
To which she sent another awful email back going, I told you I'm representing myself, and now you're copying my old attorney, and you can't be doing that, and whatever else she said. And I was like, the hell do I do with this? Again, Delta, will you fight? Will you deny a claim? I'd rather fight you on that than what? Because it would have been so easy for us to just be like, the dad canceled the appointment. He doesn't want to come here anymore.
Yeah.
That would have made her go away so quick. But the minute I do that, the dad...
Then you've broken...
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not following orders of that decree. I'm like, we don't get paid flippin' enough to deal with all of this. And I've already dealt with all your nonsense anyway. So I think then I went ahead and called my malpractice, I guess, and was like, what do I do with this? Like, this mom is saying this. This is what the divorce decree says. Which, funny enough, I won't say who my liability carrier is, but the woman I spoke to on their hotline was actually quite unhelpful, which I wasn't expecting, and it made me nervous for if I ever did need their help. So I guess I need to pause and think about that too. But she was like, well, yeah, it's generally a good idea to follow the decree. And I'm like, no duh.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when this mom is coming back, she's like, you need to contact your medical malpractice because they will tell you whatever. And I just sent her a one-word reply. I was like, I did contact them, and they said I need to follow the court decree.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, we've not heard from her again.
Yeah.
But, again, right in the middle of patient care where you're getting these threatening, menacing, quoting laws and things like that, I just was not anticipating.
Well, and it is one of those areas that we have to follow and abide by the law. And we are bound by that as medical providers. And I think this is the whole custody situation and who can know what information, privacy laws, all of this. I don't think as a dental field we're lax with those by any means, but I do think when it comes down to custody situations, a lot of times our team members themselves have been through custody type situations and they have strong opinions on how it should and should not go. Our opinions don't matter in these situations. We have to protect the practice, protect our practice owner by abiding by the laws set forth. And so if there is a divorce situation or a process of divorce that's happening, we really do need to be very mindful of, do we have the divorce decree? Do we have the custody paperwork? Have we been looped into all of that? Because there are many times that even I've been in the practice where a situation has come up and we're like, oh, go back to the custody paperwork. What does it say? Let's reference that before we do anything. And I don't think teams are quite as solid on that as they should be.
Well, and in my mind, I'm clearly not very well versed on all of this stuff, but you two are clearly well immersed into the legal world fighting each other. Mm-hmm. So the minute I don't follow something, both of you have lawyered up and y'all can stick your lawyer on me in a heartbeat, which is just absurd altogether. So I think your theme advice of pause. I think the other thing that really helped me was Dr. Kavita, who helps me. She's another pediatric dentist. She's my little guardian angel. And I'm like, Kavita, look at this. Have you dealt with this in another practice or whatever? And her advice was was brilliant. Was because I think, she was in the office with me that day. That's why I was kind of like, look at this mess unfolding. Mm-hmm. And she's like, good grief, so I'm glad I don't have a practice because there's so much foolery that presents itself. And she was like, I was like, can you read my reply to her? And she's like, I would take all of this out. Because I think I had said, I know this is frustrating for you that you're not allowed to have this information. It would be so easy for us. And she's like, don't give her any inch. Yeah. Keep it very short and factual.
Yes.
And so I'm glad I did that. And the other thing, she's like, and I would not reply right now.
Yeah.
And so that's your theme of pause. She goes, because then it seems like you're easily accessible to cater to this woman's requests. And you should be dealing with your patients right now, which to me, I'm like, the quicker I can resolve this and get it off of my own mental slate and try to appease this woman,
the better.
Right. Like, the longer I make her wait, is that the more crazy and frenzied she's going to get? So sometimes that's true, where it's just better to address it earlier rather than making people wait. Like, for example, when people request their records and we dilly-dally and drag our feet, that can really incense a patient.
Yeah.
Get them the damn records as fast as you can. You don't need them to
grow
have
in
more
frustration.
reason, to hate you. But in this case, this is one that Kavita's like, you wait till tomorrow to hit send. And I was like, okay. And we did, and I think it worked. Like, she has backed off.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, again, goes back to that. You sought advice, not only from your malpractice or your liability company, but also even down to the simple email response that you were going to send. Hey, doctor who's connected with me in this practice, look at this. What do you think? Even to the email response, there was advice there that you were able to take to slim down your words and then also to wait to send it. That's the pause and send strategy, right? Pause, think, and then take action, which I think is the key takeaway here. So, man, lots of crazy instances. And again, I don't think it's a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when these things are landing on your front porch. And so at least start now thinking through how you're going to respond.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone, but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.